Hey guys, in today's video I bring you an impressive and impossible to ignore story. Let's meet Zafira Nightingale, a woman who literally died and discovered that we had been deceived about the true history of humanity. During her near-death experience, she was taken to a realm of light, where she received shocking revelations about the spiritual and historical manipulation that keeps us trapped in illusion. What she saw beyond death changed everything, and hidden forces don't want this truth revealed. So before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Now get ready for this intense and transformative journey. My name is Zafira Nightingale, and for as long as I can remember, my mornings have been a sequence of almost sacred rituals. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee, the familiar sound of the alarm clock, the cozy feeling of putting on my favorite clothes as the shy sun peeks through the window. That morning, as I walked to the kitchen, still half asleep, I heard my own voice whisper, as if the soul was trying to anticipate what was about to happen, something that I couldn't understand at that moment. In the mirror, my gaze met, the reflection of a person who lived with passion and determination, but also with a slight fear of the unknown. As I prepared coffee, my mind wandered through the day's plans, remembering important meetings and unexpected encounters. In the midst of these thoughts, I received a message from Ethan, my longtime friend, joking about the daily routine and commenting with slight irony about how life sometimes felt like a play on repeat, but without the rehearsals. His relaxed tone contrasted with the quiet uneasiness I felt, as if something beyond the ordinary was about to disrupt the natural flow of time. I left home with the feeling that that day carried with it a peculiar energy, a mixture of omens and subtle melancholy. As I drove through the vibrant streets of Chicago, the hustle and bustle of the city mingled with my thoughts, and every corner seemed to hide a secret. This routine, which had been repeated on so many other days without any major surprises, now pulsed with the promise of something extraordinary, even though I didn't know for sure what was coming. Every detail, the sound of the engine, the wind passing through the open windows, the cadence of the city lights, seemed to conspire to transform a simple morning commute into a prelude to an event that would forever change my perception of life and death. I felt an inexplicable calm mixed with a latent anxiety, as if the universe was whispering an invitation to dive into the unknown. As I continued along the busy avenue, the feeling of foreboding intensified. Suddenly, an instant became eternal. In the middle of the traffic, a car appeared unexpectedly, as if destiny itself wanted to interrupt normality. My heart sped up and the screeching sound of brakes echoed in the air. In an instant of confusion and panic, the impact was violent. I felt the glass shattering and the world spinning in a chaotic choreography. At the same time, voices blended into a distorted clamor. "Careful!" I heard someone shout, but the sound was swallowed up by the roar of the accident. Amidst the chaos, my mind seemed to slow down. I remember thinking, this can't be happening. But even with my mind on alert, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pulled toward something beyond mere physical collapse. I saw my own body, motionless on the asphalt, while reality fragmented into 1,000 pieces. The pain, instead of invading, gave way to a strange calm. Between the screams and the deafening noise, the paramedics' voices appeared like a distant echo. "We have a victim. We need to act quickly." And at that very moment, I realized that something extraordinary was about to happen. The outside world seemed to dissolve, and for a brief moment I became aware of a surprising duality. Within the whirlwind of destruction, a silent dialogue emerged in my mind. Why me? What's the point of all this? The silence of the response became as palpable as the sound of approaching sirens. Amidst the anguish and destruction, every second stretched into an eternity of emotion and questioning. The impact not only altered the trajectory of my body, but also seemed to open a door to a reality where time and existence became blurred. It was on that threshold between life and death that I began to realize that this was not a mere accident. It was the prelude to something that would transcend human logic. Finding myself in this strange and inexplicable state, I realized that something was profoundly different. There I was, floating above the accident scene as if time had slowed down. There was no pain or panic, just a sense of peace that invaded every part of my being. I saw myself from the outside as if observing myself with a clarity I had never experienced. As I floated, I heard a soft voice, almost like a whisper from the universe itself, saying, "You are beyond the limits of what you know." This message echoed in my mind, mixing with visceral sensations of liberation and curiosity. Around me, the chaos of the accident transformed into a silent symphony, where every detail seemed imbued with meaning. Even without fully understanding what was happening, I felt my consciousness expanding and reaching places that before were just distant dreams. This is not the end, but a new beginning, I thought, as I allowed myself to absorb the tranquility that surrounded that unique experience. My body, motionless and defenseless, contrasted with the vastness of that space where the rules of existence seemed to have fallen apart. Amidst that extraordinary calm, the scene around me seemed to melt into a palette of soft, vibrant colors, where each hue revealed secrets that transcend human understanding. There were no barriers between past time and future time. Everything presented itself as a harmonious dance of light and shadow, where life and death were intertwined in an inexplicable communion. I felt as if every second turned into an eternity, and every thought unfolded into a narrative full of symbols and meanings. I remembered fragments of my life, but now I saw each one of them from a new perspective, where the mistakes and successes were mixed with a greater truth. "I'm seeing the invisible," I murmured internally, marveling at the clarity and depth of what I was experiencing. The experience was consolidated as a portal to something beyond physical existence, an invitation to explore the mysteries that govern the universe. At that moment, I understood that my journey was just beginning, and that feeling of peace was the key to unraveling the enigmas that awaited me. The light that surrounded me seemed to have a life of its own, leading me along a path without a defined shape, where the impossible became palpable. As I floated in this ocean of vibrant colors, I felt the presence of something that went beyond mere energy, as if each ray of light whispered ancient secrets that had long been hidden from humanity. It was as if the universe had condensed into a luminous beam, which moved with grace and purpose, guiding me through a maze of sensations and images that defied all logic. The path revealed itself in moments of pure magic, colors mixed in a silent ballet, creating shapes that momentarily resembled faces and gestures, as if the echoes of the past themselves wanted to communicate a message. In the midst of this dance of lights, I heard a soft voice, not articulated by words, but which resonated in every fiber of my being. "Go ahead, Zephyra," seemed to say the glow that surrounded me, and this message transformed my fear into an unusual courage. As he advanced, the environment became more and more welcoming, like a refuge where the hustle and bustle of the material world was forgotten. The intensity of the light softened the edges of reality, and each step, although invisible, revealed a universe of harmony and deep connection. I'm watching the impossible become real, I thought, marveling at the way space curved around me, creating a feeling that I belonged to something bigger. In this ethereal journey, moments seemed to dissolve into an eternal present where time became irrelevant and the pain of the physical world no longer had a place. Each spark of light carried with it the memory of ages past and the promise of a future full of revelations. I talked to the light, feeling that it understood the desires of my heart, guiding me towards a destiny that defied the boundaries of the known. And so, surrounded by this luminous journey, I was transformed not only by what I saw, but by the certainty that the universe, in its infinite wisdom, was preparing me to discover secrets that would forever change my essence. As I reached the peak of brilliance, I felt like time had vanished and space was curving around me. Faced with the immensity of that light, a figure began to slowly materialize as if the universe condensed the essence of all pure feelings into human form. His features were serene, and his presence emanated a calm that calmed even the storm that was forming inside me. Zephyra, I heard the soft, deep voice which seemed to come from all directions. You are ready to see the hidden truth. His words, filled with gentle authority, reverberated in my heart, and for a moment, all doubts and fears melted away. I, still stunned, could only respond with a whisper. Who are you? The figure approached, and its eyes shone with the wisdom of the ages. I am the essence of ancient knowledge, the presence that guides those who seek the light beyond the shadow, she said, as a faint smile touched her lips. Each word was accompanied by a wave of energy that seemed to directly touch my soul. The sensation was of being enveloped in a blanket of love and understanding, where the weight of the world became light and the clarity of a new understanding began to form. As I tried to absorb every detail of that encounter, the presence continued. You see, Zephyra, every story, every pain and every triumph are connected in a great mosaic. The forces that act in your life are not random. They are messengers of a greater truth that transcends the physical. His words were like brushstrokes that drew in my mind visions of ancient worlds and forgotten civilizations, where spirituality was the language of the gods. In the midst of that silent and touching dialogue, I felt that my own essence was being reconfigured. The divine presence invited me to embrace not only the truth of my experience, but the mission to share this knowledge with the world, even if it meant facing skepticism and unimaginable challenges. The divine presence began to reveal secrets that seemed to pierce the veil of time. His words, soft and powerful, transported me to visions where the story unfolded in layers of truth and manipulation. In a murmur that spread like an ancient whisper, I heard, "You see, Zephyra, the records of the past have been hidden to keep humanity in check. The great civilizations that flourished millennia ago, those that were temples of wisdom and spirituality, have been silenced, their histories erased to favor a power that feeds on oblivion." As I spoke, vivid images came to mind. Golden landscapes of a majestic Africa, filled with vibrant temples and markets, faces that reflected pride and determination, and also the shadow of intrigue and manipulation. The deity continued, with a tone that mixed melancholy and hope. These cultures, which united in harmony with nature and the cosmos, were gradually subjugated by forces that wished to impose a new paradigm, where materialism and disunity prevailed. With each word, I felt as if my very essence was intertwined with this grand narrative, and a sense of urgency took over me. You must remember, Zephyra, that knowledge of the past is the key to liberation from the future. It is not just about recognizing historical errors, but about rebuilding the connection with our true identity. In a moment of deep emotion, I asked in a trembling voice, "How can we recover what was lost?" The answer came in a silence filled with meaning, as if time stopped to respond. Through unity, rediscovery of our roots, and the courage to challenge the system that prefers ignorance. Each vision that the divine presence showed me brought with it not only the beauty and strength of an ancestral legacy, but also the weight of ancient oppression. This revelation, as intense as it was enlightening, ignited in me the determination to fight against the manipulation that tries to erase the truth. I felt that from that moment on, I could no longer ignore the call to retrieve these memories and share this truth with the world, no matter how painful the journey might be. Suddenly, the intensity of that universe of light began to dissipate, and I felt a deep pull that dragged me back to reality. In an instant, the vastness of colors and sensations was replaced by momentary darkness, followed by a whirlwind of sounds and movements that dragged me into my body. Waking up in a cold, bright room was shocking. I was lying in a hospital bed, machines blinking and the smell of disinfectant permeating the air. I felt a weakness that contrasted with the inner strength I had experienced minutes before. Doctors moved urgently, and hurried voices echoed around me. One of them approached, with eyes that mixed surprise and relief, saying, "Zephyra, you have returned to us miraculously." His words, although simple, brought a mix of comfort and confusion. My relatives, still stunned, murmured in unison, "She's alive, it's a miracle." However, physical reality imposed itself with each painful beat and each scar that marked my body. Although my spirit was strengthened by what I had witnessed, every physical sensation was a reminder of the fragility of earthly existence. I felt a tension between body and soul, as if two realities were in conflict: the ephemeral pain of the flesh and the almost divine peace that still vibrated within me. As a kind nurse tried to reassure my family, I whispered, barely audible, "I saw something that changed everything, something that cannot be forgotten." A worried nurse approached and, with a look of compassion, said, "You need to rest, dear." It was an intense experience. His words, while comforting, could barely encompass the magnitude of what had happened. Time seemed to have resumed its usual rhythm, but within me, the memory of that universe beyond life remained vivid and challenging. While professionals treated the visible wounds, a silent battle was raging in my mind and heart, where the strength of that transcendental encounter mixed with the painful reality of the accident. I knew that although I was physically weakened, something fundamental had transformed within me, marking the beginning of a new journey full of challenges and revelations, where every pain and scar would bear witness to the incredible crossing between life and death. The pain and skepticism that followed my return was intense and challenging. When I tried to share my experience with those around me, I was met with looks of disbelief and suspicious murmurs. One rainy afternoon, as I sat in a small living room filled with familiar faces, Ethan, my longtime friend, murmured with a tone of skepticism, "This all seems impossible, Zephyra. How could you have experienced something so surreal?" His words, cut like blades, but I knew the truth he carried was greater than human doubts. With a heavy heart, I decided to share my journey on social media, seeking to reach those who, like me, felt a void that reason could not fill. However, the reaction was overwhelming. Messages of support were mixed with fierce criticism and accusations that it was all just a hallucination caused by trauma. One lonely morning, I received threatening emails and cryptic messages, as if invisible forces wanted to silence my voice. "You don't know what you're messing with," said one of the messages, filled with a threatening tone that left me feeling goosebumps, but also more determined. Gabriel Summers, the doctor who had witnessed my return to life, became a crucial ally. In his words, he saw scientific support for something that seemed to transcend medical logic. "What you described, Zephyra, may seem inexplicable now, but there are phenomena that science still does not understand." This validation, even if partial, was a balm for my soul torn apart by other people's doubts. In addition to him, Lillian Parker, a digital influencer, used her platform to publicize my testimony, attracting both a skeptical audience and others who, with similar experiences, found in my story an echo of their own searches. And then, Marcus Reed, the historian, joined the cause, highlighting the importance of rescuing a historical narrative that had been manipulated by forces that preferred the people's true identity to be forgotten. Every word, every criticism, and every support pushed me to move forward, facing the spiritual and social battle with courage. Even in the face of threats and isolation, the flame of truth burned within me, fueled by a mission that seemed greater than physical existence itself. The spiritual battle and ultimate transformation unfolded amid a storm of emotions and daily challenges, where the fine line between reality and the unseen became increasingly blurred. On a gray morning, as the Chicago winds stirred the fallen leaves along the sidewalks, I felt every beat of my heart resonate with the intensity of an inner war. In the stillness of my room, the distant sound of drums seemed to mark the rhythm of an ancestral dance, reminding me that every scar and every tear were witnesses to the journey that transformed me. I found myself walking through a crossroads, where the echoes of my encounter with the divine presence mixed with the whispers of those who opposed the truth. In a secret meeting with Gabriel, Lillian, Marcus, and a few who joined the cause, our conversations were filled with fervor and hope. "We are not alone," Marcus said with conviction, as Lillian recorded every word so that the truth would not be silenced by the shadows of power. Gabriel, with his firm and calm voice, reinforced that science could not yet explain such phenomena, but that the lived experience was indubitable. These meetings gave me strength to face daily challenges, veiled threats, virtual attacks, and the constant dilemma between reason and faith. One night, while the silence of the city became my companion, I felt a wave of energy run through my being, as if the universe wanted to confirm that the spiritual battle would not be in vain. In an instant of clarity, I understood that each difficulty was an invitation to transcend the limitations of the physical world, to embrace a greater mission of revealing hidden truth. I talked to myself, repeating words of courage. Transformation begins within, and even if the world doubts, the truth is the light that never goes out. This almost ritualistic self-talk was my shield against discouragement. Every day the struggle intensified, but so did my determination to move forward. The experiences I lived, the visions that marked me, and the allies I found transformed me from a simple survivor to a spiritual warrior. I knew the journey was far from over, but the certainty of having awakened something deep within me lit the way, defying the darkness and opening space for a new era of consciousness. As the days passed, the spiritual battle intensified in every cell of my being, as if I were waging a silent war against forces that insisted on keeping the truth hidden. On a cloudy morning, as I walked through the streets of Chicago, the weight of experiences mixed with the hope that blossomed from each encounter with my allies. I felt that each step was a manifesto of resistance. In an intimate conversation with Gabriel, who was watching the horizon, with eyes full of determination, I heard him say, "Zephira, every scar is a reminder of the strength we have to transform the world. Don't allow fear to steal your light." His words mixed with the distant sound of traffic and the murmur of the city, echoing in the depths of my soul. That same night, during a secret meeting in an old warehouse converted into a shelter for our conversations, Marcus, Lillian, and I fervently discussed strategies for breaking the oppression that tried to silence our testimonies. We must use every tool we have, words, images, the knowledge of the ancestors, to open the eyes of those who still sleep, Marcus stated with conviction, as Lillian frantically typed on her laptop, recording every detail. The environment was charged with palpable energy, where the spirit of resistance met human vulnerability. Between confidences and contained laughter, there were also moments of doubt and tiredness. In one of these moments, as I looked out the living room window, I thought out loud, "Can we really make a difference?" Gabriel, with a serene smile, replied, "Transformation starts from the inside out. Every act of courage, no matter how small it may seem, is a seed of revolution." This exchange of looks and words reminded me that, even in the midst of darkness, the light of truth never goes out. In the solitude of the early morning, when the world seemed to silence its voices, I talked to myself, remembering the teachings of the divine presence and the mission I now carried. Every obstacle faced, every threat, every skeptical look, turned into fuel for my journey. The pain, which before seemed like an unbearable burden, was now living proof of my struggle and my transformation. I knew I was forging not only a new path for myself, but opening space for others to awaken to a reality that transcends the physical, that unites past and present in a cry of liberation and love. If you liked this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.